Well, let me just introduce my panel at this point. I'm being joined by Gautam Chintamani, who's a film historian as well as author, Dr. Bhavna Bharmi, who's a clinical psychologist, Saira Shah Halim, who's an activist, as well as Matthew Anthony, who's a spokesperson for Congress. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining me. Well, let me just start with you, Gautam Chintamani. How do you look at what's happening? I mean, let's just start with the basic. Some of these crimes that we have been hearing about across the country are absolutely bone-chilling. I'm not finding any other word except for the fact that it's bone-chilling. That's the word that I keep repeating again and again. And just the manner in which is unfolding with the immediate family members, possibly with no thought at all, and the way the discourse is now shaping up, what do you make out of it as somebody who's very closely associated with the film industry as such?
Good evening, everyone, and this is definitely a very important topic to discuss. I was hearing what Manoj Abraham had to say, and then I'm very I won't say happy, but it's heartening to know that the police is taking notice of things like social media and what is impacting people. But this is not something new. There has been history and recorded history of popular culture inspiring copycat crimes. But you know the fault lies on both sides. It can't be that all these cases that Manoj Abraham was talking about are directly related to films. But then, yes, if you glorify something in the manner that it's being glorified today, being talked about today, it does leave an impression on the young minds. And the average population of this country is quite young. Internet is very accessible. So there are factors which need to be taken into consideration. But I would like to say that while see, it's almost like a chicken and egg kind of a situation. So there was a film called Clockwork Orange, which came out in the early 70s, and it glorified violence. It was so bad that it inspired copycat crimes. And Stanley Kubrick, the director, stopped the release and the exhibition of the film himself. But the fact remains that the film was based on a book by Anthony Burgess, Clockwork Orange, which was based on a real life incident that happened to his wife. So somewhere you can say that films glorify violence. There's no doubt about that. Also, what I understood from what Manoj Ibrahim was saying, that you can't go out and tell cinema or filmmakers to be responsible, because it's the interesting story which sells. It's the story of the villain. It's the nature of our times. It's not just cinema. It's just about everything, and it's been a thing for the longest period. The question which one needs to ask is
That's
that
true.
you can tell the same story in a very different way. And two examples that I can give you from the recent past are films like Race, where Shah Rukh Khan plays the villain, and it's a real life character. They glorified it to such an extent that the real life character's son was suing the filmmaker for making his father look like a better man than what he was. And you had a relatively smaller actor, a supporting actor like Nawazuddin Siddiqui playing the super cop who goes after this guy. Or you look at Padmavat, the way you take a star like Ranveer Singh to play Alauddin Khilji, and you take a comparatively smaller star like Shahid Kapoor to play the hero, so to speak. So there are a lot of factors at place. There's no denying that cinema is very, very powerful. Social media is very powerful. And the fact that there is no difference between film and social media, because these social media stars are almost as big as film stars. When they go out, people get inspired by them. So I
That's
think
true.
we have to tread very, very carefully. But I think somewhere the authorities need to be in the same century while dealing with the criminals that they are. It's very, and I use this word very carefully here. It's very simplistic to say that filmmakers need to be responsible. You're the police. Indian police is one of the best in the world. They have a fantastic information network. So they also, I'm sure, are thinking of ways to catch these criminals or be one step ahead, like Manoj Abraham was just mentioning.
Right. In fact, as you're mentioning this, there's also the response that has come in of the Film Employees Federation of Kerala's of Kerala. That this is an interesting response, quite in line of what you're really saying, and they are also saying, um, they're also talking about this being an extremely simplified reflection theory. This cannot hold true. It's talking about these are just political youth, student movement leaders, police officers, psychologists, journalists. The basis of these opinions is an equation that violence in which the film is cause of social evils or a very weak, simplified reflection theory. The way violence is treated needs to be seen. So these are some of the responses that are coming in. But let me just get in Mr. Matthew Anthony at this point before I come back to you, Chintamani. Mr. Matthew, how do you look at what's happened in the assembly, what the Chief Minister has said?
Sneha, thanks for taking me into the show. And all of us are very concerned about what's happening in Kerala. Though I don't want to take it politically, there are some holistic issues which has led to this. There is a total societal failure which is happening on multiple fronts. A little bit of it, is going to the government because there is no fear about the law and order system in the state, which makes people to be repeat offenders or first-time offenders because they see big offenders coming out of the jail or being treated in a very good manner in the jail. There are many examples for us to call for. Then there is an intrusion of the drugs, because if I call upon the excise department's statistics, which is given and presented in the assembly, there is 41,531 NDPS cases registered in the state in less than 15 months. Around another 41,369 cases differently. And out of that, Cochin city is largest in that one, which is where the IT hub is largely there, after Trivandrum. But followed that, the surprising move is from Malappuram. Now, if you look into this, there's a combination of lack of monitoring in the society of what the children are watching in their mobile phones. Earlier, when there was a movie theater or a TV watching, a lot of things could have been controlled. Now, with the unlimited access to the social media, and due to lack of time and the change in the society and the culture, everybody is so immersed in their own mobile phones and devices, they're not able to look into what the children or the youngsters are seeing. And there is no other ways of monitoring or giving them a guidance. And after the COVID, what you have seen is, though everybody is connected to the social media, there is less of human interaction. So the children and the youngsters are very less socially built up in terms of the defense to take a criticism, insecurity, handle insecurity, failures, and everything like that. It reaches into a state where one argument leads to a very violent reaction. It's becoming very impulsive.
You're actually reiterating what the Chief Minister has said. So am I right in saying the way the social and the family breakdown has happened?
I'm not completely agreeing with the Chief Minister.
Made references to is something that you're agreeing. Okay.
We have agreed. Our leader Ramesh Chennithila has moved this motion, which the Chief Minister has agreed to discuss in the assembly, and then we all have unifiedly agreed to support this. That the balance of peace has to be maintained and built in the state of Kerala. There is no politics in this one. There is a small disagreement there where he says it is only the movies. No, it is not. It is a combination of movies, drugs. Though I respect Manoj Abraham for what he is, there is a total failure of the law and order system where the fear in the kids or the teenagers are not there about the law and order system, where they will have to face some consequences if they do a crime like this. So there is a combination of all these things which is resulting in such heinous crimes. You saw in Paravur, one neighbor killing 4 to 5 of their neighbors for some issue on their dog. This happened 3 months back, if you remember, Sneha.
So, Saira, if I can get you...
constituency where...
Saira Shah Aleem, if I can get you into what Matthew Anthony is saying and possibly what Gautam Chintamani was also saying, that yes, movies do have a role, but how can you tell them to, come out with the movies the way they need to, or what movies to do? Socially responsible movies, yes, but then how do you get to define that? And what about the other circumstances? I mean, the Congress here, Matthew Anthony is saying, where's the law and order? Where is, people are not worried, people are not scared.
Okay, so firstly, good evening. I think it's a very pertinent discussion. Now, there are two things here. Firstly, the law enforcement agencies need to be held accountable for rising crimes. That's correct. However, I also agree with the Kerala CM when he said that, when people watch violence on OTT platforms or watch very violent films that glorify violence, for example, you've seen, crimes, people glorify characters like Kabir Singh and the character in Animal. And if you've seen the movie film, the film Dar came out in 1994, and people thought this toxic masculinity or probably shadowing
And
a
people
woman,
loved it.
harassing a woman is pretty acceptable and is something heroic to do. And people loved it, became a super hit. Look at Animal. I mean, it's soaring success. So people are lapping up this, bludgeoning people to death, hacking people to death, and they get inspired by these crime thrillers, and they feel they can get away with it. Because, see, whether it's Khalnayak, whether it is, any of the films that glorify, criminals and show them in a very, like how I would put it, in a very suave, sexy way. So people think it's a very, nice character and something that they can kind of, visualize themselves as. So I think it's very misleading for the youth to take these people as role models, where smoking is acceptable, alcoholism is acceptable, in the sense harassing women is acceptable, bludgeoning people to death, hacking people to death is acceptable. And there have been dozens of cases through the years where the culprit has confessed to the police that I got inspired by ABC film, and that is how I murdered my girlfriend. That is how I hacked my, so-and-so elderly person in the family because I saw this particular film. So yes, films do reflect society, but also, how the popular media portrays society as also gets affected, in real. People watch films and they romanticize heroes, they romanticize villains, they romanticize the main protagonist or the antagonist, and they feel
are inspired by the
it is
people.
something really.
How do you? This is like the chicken egg. This is the chicken egg
Movies,
debate.
like I said,
People may say,
it
listen,
goes
we are making
both in
movies,
hand.
but what is happening in the society? Like you
Yeah,
have
we cannot
you have an
isolate
entire
the two.
Netflix series with the Jolly cyanide case.
Yes, yeah. Now, for example, even these spades of madness, people saying the character in Joker, why don't I do something like that, because the man was heroic, right? And end of the day, the film Shah Rukh Khan did get away with all that he was doing. So people look at Kabir Singh, it was a runaway hit. You look at Animal, it was the biggest hit the year that it was released. So people feel that yes, there is a certain element of romanticism in these films, and why not in the sense ape these these antagonists, these anti-heroes, and and they feel it's something fashionable. So yes, I think
Okay, Matthew Anthony,
though we
30
really
seconds, 40
cannot,
seconds. Do you
in the
agree with
sense-
what Miss Saira is saying politically?
I would rather say, it is not politically to be debated at this point of time. We have to keep the politics aside and we have to work together. Though we don't agree with the chief minister completely, we have to work together to bring this down, because, the state is facing so much of an issue. Every day, 3 to 4 people are getting killed just like this. So the Congress party has moved in the assembly, agreed to cooperate with the state government on measures that can help us build down or bring down these gross murders and violence. It's not only murders. You saw the ragging and then the public call for violence. It's totally unacceptable. And today, somebody has murdered a boy has murdered his son, a boy has murdered his mother, and an elder brother has raped his younger sister under drug influence. There is so much happening on a daily basis. So we will be mature enough to not to politically debate it much, but to disagree courteously with the chief minister. At the same time, we work together to bring some sort of a balance to build peace and balance into the society there.
Okay, let me just get in Mr. Chintamani, and before Dr. Bhavna, just give me a few minutes. I want to take a line. I want to take an answer from Mr. Chintamani. Mr. Chintamani, it's unlikely that you are going to take away crimes from movies. And, as all panelists have spoken about, some have made references to movies, they have been absolute hits with viewers. But is it time that the sensibilities of how these crimes are projected change? But is that also something that can be called for or demanded of by people? Because, at the end of the day, they are also doing a business.
I don't think it's we can look at it in terms of business or thereabouts. See, let's look at let's look at life, with slightly broader perspective. There's more to life than cinema. Now, you look at the Neeraj Grover case, or say you take the case which happened with an executive in Gurgaon where he stabbed his wife 18 times and went to work. So people hung out with with these kind of people. Nobody could guess what Maria was doing. There is the crimes that Mr. Anthony was mentioning about the killing and the hacking, and you also mentioned in the beginning. It's it depicts, I don't know, I mean, but it's psychotic in nature. Now, if you look at life from a different point of view, there have been studies which say that 1 in 100 is a psychopath capable of killing. Now, these people exist amongst us. Not all films which are violent or which were mentioned here go on to inspire copycat crimes like Animal. There's no denying the level of violence in Animal. People have different takes on the film. I for one, think that it was an interestingly made film, but that's a different argument. How many cases do you know about Animal being replicated? Take for instance, there are high incidents of gun violence in America, and people are said, and filmmakers are told constantly, do not glorify guns in films because it inspires real life killing, and films like The Dark Knight, where the perpetrator did say that I was inspired by Dark Knight. But look at Japan or UK, the same
Okay.
films run there. Japanese films are very violent, but look at the copycat crime there, it's very low because guns are not easily available. So this argument can go on forever. I think that filmmakers definitely need to be responsible. They need to take stock of
Okay.
the fact that they can go on to inspire. But it's a little harsh to look at films of today and then deride them the way we are. Whereas you look at somebody like a Haji Mastan, who's said to have inspired Diwar film. He was a known gangster. He was celebrated. You have photos with filmmakers hobnobbing with him.
Hmm.
You have people going and acting like Haji Mastan.
Right.
So somewhere the argument comes back that what is your action going to inspire? And the other thing is that you can look at the
Okay.
story, then I can make a case or I can argue that look at Animal. After all whatever the main character does, he's left with nothing. But that's expecting too much of people to understand that you will not be left anywhere with crime. I get that
Okay.
argument also, but at the end of the day, if violence is
Okay.
accessible and violence is there on internet, social media, you also need to make sure that there is some kind of a check and balance in place. I totally agree with what the fellow panelists are saying, but again, right now,
Right.
this kind of reaction we've seen in the past also. When people when people commit crimes, when they get away with that in real life, then cinema cannot be completely blamed. But yes, I totally agree that in this day and age, when filmmakers, film stars are celebrated to the extent that they are, they need to take great responsibility because something which might be very simple for them
Okay.
can be interpreted in a very different way.
Okay, Mr. Chintamani, I'm sorry I'm interjecting you at this point. Let me just get in Dr. Bhavna Barmi, who's been waiting very patiently. Dr. Bhavna, I have an important question to ask, and I think all the panelists at some point made a reference to that. But Mr. Chintamani also spoke about cases, psychotic cases. Now, with the level of frequency of these cases that have been witnessed across the country, we're talking about Kerala today, but this isn't a Kerala problem alone. These crimes are being witnessed across the country for that matter. I mean, the Kerala police has done a study. It studied these 65 cases. They're talking about alcohol, drugs, breakdown of family, online content, including online gamings, which many times have been violent, as well as movies. As a psychologist, how do you really put this together? How do you look at this? How significant, relevant is this finding to what we are witnessing today?
Thank you for inviting me to discuss this very sensitive topic, which is actually a violent trend epidemic, I would say, psychologically. And this is stemming from a variety of what everybody's saying over here. So it's basically stemming from a psychosocial cultural combination effect, which is impacted. It is impacted by the society's value system, by the family dynamics, which are becoming aggressively dysfunctional, by the predispositions of mental health concerns, which are on the increase. And despite all of us being so aware, we are not cognizant of taking treatment at the time when the predisposition itself starts. Again, combined with the availability of substances, alcohol, drugs, which are so freely available, and then aggressive online games or reels or violent movies. So what is basically happening is that it is causing a psychological impact of emotional desensitization and reduced empathy. If a child or an individual watches too much violence through all these measures, killing or cruelty, they may become less sensitive to other people's pain and imbibe it. They may struggle to express emotions and fail to recognize the harm caused by these aggressive actions. And violence may start to feel normal, leading to higher tolerance for bullying or real life aggressions. And that is what exactly we are seeing. So, what we were talking about, the movies that are showing reckless stunts, fights, dangerous actions, can definitely lead to self-destructive and copycat behaviors. And especially children who are very, very vulnerable, they start trying to imitate such kind of dangerous activities. Because there is also difficulty in understanding these real-time consequences. Movies often show violent heroes winning, making violence look acceptable or heroic. So, especially the younger viewers may fail to understand that real life violence leads to serious consequences, which is not as much pertinent in the reels.
But Dr. Bhavna Barmi, here's my question, and this is what I want to know. Movies like this have always been made. It's not in today's age. It's not in 2022, 2024, 2025. This has always been there. Movies which have extremities at the heart of it, even glorification of crime at the heart of it has always been there. Access to content possibly not at the level, obviously not at the level that children have access to in today's times, but there have always been platforms where children have been able to view, including there was a time when comics and books used to be the target because children used to get it from them. I remember that. So, I mean, what's changed for things to be so drastic?
I think one, the exposure has become like never before. Secondly, the mental health concerns have built up to a great level. And thirdly, there is availability. There is availability of so much, from guns to substances, which are all around. And what is not available is the family. What is not available are other constructive activities for an individual, and especially children, to do. So I think it is very, very important for us to revisit the family dynamics and the social structure to be able to re-monetize everything that we're talking about over here. So that means besides introducing only movies with positive role models, we as a family, we as a society need to be responsible. We need to be the role models. So
all right, I think there's some network issue, but we'll just leave it at where you, Dr. Bhavna Barmi, have left it, because it just brings everything together. While, yes, the assembly, at least, and I think what's very important is that at least there is a political discussion around it. At least Kerala, the assembly and the police is discussing this. They are looking into this beyond just rhetoric, which itself is very heartening. And I think the country really can look into this. This is something that India struggles with. This is something that India needs to take note of extremely seriously. These are crimes that are not only with adults or with children. This is very much at the heart of families, ever more now than before. So Gautam Chintamani, Dr. Bhavna Barmi, thank you very much for your time. Saira Shah Halim, as well as Matthew Anthony, thank you very much for your time and your perspectives. It's time for a very short break. On the other side, news and updates.